Welcome back to Up All Afternoon on Entertainment Weekly Radio, Sirius XM 105. I am your host, Kyle Anderson, and I am overjoyed to be joined by my next guest. You know him as Fox Mulder on The X-Files. You know him as a best-selling author. He'll always be Denise from Twin Peaks to me. And you also know him as a musician. His second album, Every Third Thought, will be arriving on February 9th. I welcome in the incredibly talented David Duchovny. How are you, sir?
I'm fine, thank you.
Thanks so much for doing this, man. You and I talked right around the time that your first record came out.
Yeah.
And it was called Hell or High Water, just a fantastic collection of tunes. And you ended up touring that thing for, it seemed like, quite a long time. You ended up doing a lot of shows in support of that album. And so what did that do for you as a writer and as a performer, and how do you think that fed into this new album, Every Third Thought?
Well, it just made me a lot more comfortable, I think, as a singer, more than anything. I didn't really play guitar. I mean, maybe we did a Tom Petty cover, and I would play guitar on that. But just having that experience of singing, of having to sing live, of really having to put it out there, was important for when I got back into the studio to record this second album. Because I think, I'm not a natural singer, and it's not something that I ever thought I'd be doing. So the first time I was recording the first album, I was probably I know I was scared. I was probably more tentative than I am now. And then just going out and singing, 14 nights in a row, or 14 out of 17 nights in a little tour, really just made me understand singing a little better and made me more confident.
Yeah. And so did that new confidence, and you can totally hear that on this album, by the way, and so did that new confidence in your voice affect the way that these songs came together in the kind of writing process? Were you able to treat your voice like more of a kind of dynamic instrument?
Probably. It's more of something that, Colin Lee and Mitch Stewart, who arranged and produced the album, could answer better. But I think in terms of, again, going back to touring with the band, I got more comfortable with the band, and therefore more comfortable collaborating on these songs, which some of them are co-written with Colin and Pat McCusker and Mitch. So that as I brought in other writers, as I brought in other guys to round out these songs, they would necessarily, having been touring with me, they might push me melodically certain places that I might not go on my own, just because I wouldn't have had the confidence to force myself to do it. So Colin may have, pushed a bridge into a certain key or higher than I might be comfortable going, but he knows that I can do it because he's heard it. But it's not something that I might have gone to on my own.
Yeah. We just heard the first song from this album. It's called Half-Life, just premiered on Billboard yesterday. And I've heard a handful of other tunes from the new album, Every Third Thought. And do I detect, David, a little bit more, almost a kind of psychedelic influence on this record? Well,
a lot of the times when I'm collaborating with Pat or Colin, I'll say, well, here's a song, and I'll have written it, and I'll say, but I'm hearing it like a Bowie song, or I'm hearing it like a Petty song, or let's say the song Mo on this album. Mm-hmm. I'm hearing it like a Fleetwood Mac song. I'm hearing like a bass tom-tom interplay like a Fleetwood Mac song. And these are not things that I can actually explain to anybody musically. I really just come to it as a fan, or sounds that I like, or a sound that I like. So I would say to Colin, I'd give him a song and I'd say, and I'm hearing this like Heroes, or like Half-Life. To me, it was like, I just love that kind of droning Brian Eno vibe of Heroes, the the whole song. So I was like, I'm hearing Half-Life a little like that. So then Colin came up with this synthesizer riff, and it kind of has that kind of marching vibe to it. So I'm not sure if it's psychedelic, but it's certainly more wide-ranging than the more folky or country rock of the first one.
And was that something that do you think just kind of happened naturally during the process of putting the record together, or did you specifically want to do an album that kind of pushed those boundaries a little bit more this time around?
I think it had to do, again, with me getting more confident that, at least in my musical tastes, and less of like, the first one is really like, oh, well, geez, I didn't even know I could write a song. I'll do whatever you want with it, and if it sounds like a song, then I think we're all winning. And this one, it's more like, yeah, I'm kind of hearing it this way. Can we get there? Can we produce it this way? And I think what I can bring to these guys who are a lot younger than me is I bring music from the late 60s and the 70s to them. I mean, I'm sure they've heard it, but I bring a real love, and like it's in my DNA. So if you're hearing something psychedelic, it's probably coming from me saying, I want this sound in there.
Yeah. We're talking with David Duchovny here on Up All Afternoon. He has a brand new album called Every Third Thought that will be arriving on February 9th. And, of course, you can see him Wednesday nights on Fox on the new season of The X-Files. David, I'm curious, and I know we talked a little bit about this last time we spoke about music, but I'm curious, now that you have 2 albums and a couple of little tours under your belt, what do you feel like that you get from writing and performing music that maybe you don't get from acting or from writing?
Well, it's a very personal experience performing live. It's very much like doing stage work. So every night when you're doing a play, it's a different play because the audience makes it different. The audience reacts to different lines differently. They kind of announce to you the kind of play that they want to see. And it's the same thing, I think, with playing music, is you have to be kind of alive to this organic beast that is however many people showed up that day and what kind of show they're feeling. And then you kind of try to give them their show while also, pushing them in a certain way. And it's very personal. Even without being personal, it's a very improvised, even without being improvised, experience.
Yeah. Well, I would have to imagine too that like performing a concert in a club or whatever would have to be a different type of experience because those people are actually encouraged to react and to sing along, right, and to heckle. Like, did you find that there was any kind of learning curve to performing in that type of intimacy?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I performed anywhere from like 300 would be the smallest to like 2,500 would be the biggest. Mm-hmm. But I guess, compared to like big rock and roll acts, that's still super intimate. It's not 40,000, it's not 80,000. I would have no idea how to connect with an audience there. I don't know how they do it. I'm sure it's just something that they got to figure out as they go along. There's no way to prepare for playing for 80,000 people, I wouldn't imagine. But the learning curve, yeah, but just basic things like, I occasionally I've run around too much and not had enough breath to sing, things like that. It's like, oh shit, I got to sing now. And I'm sweating and I'm panting over here. And, because like I said, singing is not like a natural gift for me. So I kind of have to concentrate when I'm doing it. So if I'm having too good a time, the songs might not be as good.
That's got to be kind of a good sign for you, though, right? That you got so into performing your own songs that you realized that you maybe too into them.
Well, it's not so much that I'm into the song, but I'm into what's going on in the room,
right?
And I'm into I'm like the MC. I'm out there, and I'm going to take you on this little journey for a couple hours tonight. And sometimes I got to keep you going, and I realized that after I started playing, I was like, yeah, it really is. Like if my energy flags, like the whole room will flag. Yeah. And it's a real interesting phenomenon. But I also realized that people don't really care if I hit some bad notes. They're just there for the music, and it's like they're going to forgive. Whereas I thought in the beginning, I was like, oh my God, they're going to make fun of me if I hit a few flat notes or a bunch of flat notes or whatever. I was like, no, that's not really the case.
People are willing to sort of give you a little bit of rope.
Yeah, I think because it's live, and they appreciate that you're out there sweating and trying to have them have a good time.
Yeah. David Duchovny is my guest here on Up All Afternoon. You can hear his new album, Every Third Thought. It'll be out February 9th. The new song, Half-Life, is available right now. It just premiered on Billboard a couple days ago. Steve, you're about to go out. You're doing some shows in Australia. And I'm curious that for this record, for these sort of next run of shows, do you plan on doing anything sort of seriously different? Are you going to drop in any kind of new covers and any kind of new plans for the upcoming performances?
Well, we're going to do the whole new album, so that's new. There's probably 6 songs that we've never performed live. So So we've had to do that. We've had to rehearse for that. And I always like to have a cover that is kind of geographically germane to where I'm going. So when we played in Vancouver, we did a band song, a Canadian content song, and we're looking at In Excess or something for a cover in Australia, or Crowded House in New Zealand or something. We'll figure something out to really kiss ass on the home team. I'm definitely not above that.
No, nor should you be, David. I feel like I would like to see you channel Michael Hutchence. I feel like that would be a thing I would like to see.
Yeah, you may be the only one.
You know what, David? That is a hill I will happily die on. That is not a problem for me at all. So as far as and you've talked a bunch, David, about how sort of deeply personal this process is for you. Did you find that you were sort of tapping into new ideas or new places within yourself when you were kind of putting together the words for this album?
Yeah, I think it just comes when it comes that way, and there are certain. There's definitely certain things that happen that are specific in life that will drive you to want to write about them, and then there's just like the fact of being human and alive and going through this life with everybody else on this planet at this moment in time that you're going to write about. So they're very specific and very general at the same time, and I think the best songs work that way. I'm certainly not. I'm not a guy that's ever going to write a confessional song that is going to give you any specifics. I'm not interested in that. I don't like it. I'm not drawn to people who are musically like that. I'm drawn to people that kind of transform their personal story into something universal.
Yeah. Well, and what I've always loved about your lyrics, and this comes up in your books as well, that you really do have a passion and an interest in words and in wordplay and in turns of phrase and in poetry. Has that always been a thing for you, or is that also a kind of late onset thing along with your interest in songwriting? No,
that's always been the case for me. I've always, my father identified himself as a writer. Didn't publish his first novel until he was 72, but he did, and he published it at 72, which is amazing. Hot young novelist at 72. And so I grew up the son of a writer, and he made it clear to me that writing was an important thing, and writing was thinking. And I remember early on, I think in college, we were studying, I think it was James Joyce, and it might have been Joyce who said every word is a novel, and then you realize, words have gone on these journeys with us, and they've transformed themselves and they've changed. And, you go to the Oxford English Dictionary and you see the first usage of a word and the derivation of it and then what it turned into. And I find words fascinating that way. Yeah. And I love that all really comes across in your songs as well. Like as a fellow, nerdy word obsessive, I'm always pleased to hear these turns of phrase. David Duchovny. We have the most word challenged president in the history of our nation. It is such a bummer. He knows 5 of them. And he misspells half of them on Twitter, which is really kind of a bummer. Oh man. David Duchovny is here on Up All Afternoon. His new album is called Every Third Thought. It is coming February 9th. You can still pre-order that on Pledge Music and get all kinds of cool bonus stuff as well. And of course, David Duchovny can be seen Wednesday nights on Fox on a show called The X-Files, which people seem to dig. And there's an episode coming up tonight, David, that's written by a guy named Darren Morgan, and people who love The X-Files know that he is this kind of he's written some of the best episodes of that show. What is it to you? Speaking of writers and writing, what is it to you that Darren gets and that brings to The X-Files that other guys maybe don't? Well, Darren is kind of a one-of-a-kind guy and writer. So he's going to bring whatever it is that Darren is, and that's a very specific thing. Whether or not I could put that into words, I don't know. That's why he's so good, because you can't really say what it is that Darren does, but when you read it, you go, that's Darren. And one thing that Darren and I have talked about, and even I think he's talked about it with Chris, that Darren hates to work. He hates having a job. So every show he's ever been employed by, he tries to destroy from within. So if you think of every Darren script as trying to destroy the X-Files, trying to cut it off at the knees, to expose it as ridiculous. And I think the means by which he does it is usually by coming at my character,
right,
Mulder, by making him ridiculous and silly. And the challenge for me, because I love what he's doing, is to make Mulder the same guy that he was the week before, where he's kind of a somewhat responsible and capable FBI agent, and all of a sudden he's this goofy, silly, ridiculous personage, and try to make him the same guy. And it's really a great challenge. And then you've got Darren's very, very funny writing on top of that.
I like the idea of all Darren Morgan scripts as sort of self-destruct mechanisms. That is,
they are.
It's kind of a good way to think about it.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean, and I think if you were to go back and look at each of them, you'd say, oh, yes, he hates the X-Files. He truly hates the X-Files.
Well, the X-Files is Wednesday nights on Fox, and you can hear David Duchovny's new album, Every Third Thought. It is out February 9th. David, thank you so much for coming by and hanging out. This has been a pleasure, as always.
Thank you. I appreciate it.